and eventually we go live after internet and headphone difficulties. Today I'm joined, and I think the first time I get to say this, I'm very excited, by friend of the show, Chris Ritson. How are you doing?
I am very well, very, very well. I've got nothing to complain about today, apart from being a classic English person, and complain about the weather being too hot. But I'll complain about it being too cold for the rest of the year. So I'm going to try and enjoy it while I can.
How many days a year do you think the weather is actually the perfect temperature?
I guess it depends where you are in the world, but for me, perfect temperature is like 25 to 30. So quite warm
Why?
for my northeast blood, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's normally like warm is like 5 to 10 degrees up in Newcastle usually. But yeah, that's probably, I don't know. That's maybe like 3% of the year. I'm being ambitious.
Well, we won't just talk about weather all of the call, even if it is two British people. We're going to talk about go to network, go to market. I'd love to start, like, if you want to give a brief introduction to yourself, and then I'd actually like to just go through your career, because you've done kind of SDR, sales, head of sales, seen global SDR, and now kind of helping people build that themselves. So short intro, and then let's jump into the very beginning.
Yeah, short intro. So started as an SDR, hammering out 200 calls a day. Wasn't allowed to use these wild things and inventions like email at the time. And after about 6 months in the SDR role, I was introduced to email. I was allowed to send a mass blast once every 6 months to about 20,000 random people who never got back to me. So kind of, that made me quit my email career pretty quickly and go back to the phone to essentially save my job. From SDR, I went and got an AE role. From AE, I was then promoted into like a sales manager and head of sales role far too quickly, to be honest with you. And that did not end well. So at 24, I was leading like a pretty big team of AEs and SDRs, like 30 to 40 reps. I got massively arrogant about that, as you do, when you have your first success in any role. And yeah, I got let go because I just wouldn't listen to anyone, basically. Kind of story of my life, actually, if you ask my parents. But and then from there, I went to a company called Peakon and started like my SDR leadership journey. So built the SDR function from the ground up at Peakon. Was lucky enough to meet and hire a lot of amazing people there as well. I think one or two are maybe on the call, which is nice to see. And great to see that they're still in sales as well, and I didn't actually scare them off with my pretty junior management skills at the time. And then from Peakon, I went to Tessian, which is where I met you, Christian, and helped, I think, kind of reshape, should we say, the SDR function at the time at Tessian is maybe the right way of saying it. Get it back on track a little bit. And then from there, I went to a couple of other companies, decided that I didn't want to help one company at a time, quit the corporate 9 to 5 sales life, and it's definitely not 9 to 5, let's all be honest with ourselves, and actually pursue a 9 to 5 life and build a lifestyle business is what I'm trying to do now, basically. And lots of ups and downs along the way, but yeah, I run two businesses. Thank God they're both profitable. And we'll see how things go in the future with regards to both of them.
Love it. Okay, so Perkbox was that first company, right, where you did the SDR to head of sales journey?
Yeah, basically, in about 18 months or so, which was just.
But you must have been smashing your numbers, or like, how did that happen?
99% luck. 99% luck. I think that's honestly the reality of a lot of successful people when they first start out. Is especially younger successful people, I think, when they don't have previous experience to lean upon, is whether they admit it or not, they were definitely in the right place at the right time. it took me going to other companies to realize that I was in the right place at the right time, and I absolutely did not have any idea about how lucky I was at that point. Right, these were the times of inbound was, demand gen. PPC was like, throw an ad on Facebook and you will get a lead that is begging to buy from you, right? So like, I didn't need to be the best salesperson in the world and run really complex cycles to close deals. It was a time of plenty, which is the opposite of right now. But it kind of it kind of set me up for that. But I was also just the person, I think, that combined that look with, I always worked hard. Um, and I was the only person on the team that people used to laugh at me for, reading extra books. They always said, there was this phrase internally, there was like, "Our books are BS," right, without swearing on this live call. And I was always like, I'm reading at night and then I'm trying these new things during the day, and then they seem to actually work all right. Like, so I'm going to keep doing that. And that was honestly the start of kind of when I fell in love with sales. Um, and then from there, when I was managing AEs, I got the opportunity to lead an SDR function in this outsourced uh, part of the business, which was up in Sheffield. And these SDRs absolutely hated life, basically. They're in this outsourced company, telemarketing company, and it was amazing to me to see that actually, if I gave them a little bit of love and attention, how we could kind of change their entire perception of their job and the industry of sales. And they started loving it after a few weeks, and they started doing well. I was like, this is weird. Like, is everyone not treated like human beings and nicely in sales? And I found out that wasn't the case, really. And sort of fell in love with the idea of SDR. That led me on the path of like, what do I choose? When I got let go from Perkbox, I got a couple of different job offers. Some were leading AE teams, a couple were leading SDR teams. And I just, honestly, it sounds so cheesy, but I just went with my gut/heart on, this is what I enjoy. I'm just going to follow what I enjoy, and the rest, I hope, will figure itself out. I don't know if it's figured itself out yet. I'm still on that journey, I think.
Well, I think you made the right decision, because something I always remember from working with you, and it always still comes across now, is your enjoyment of like helping people develop. And I think that is so much better placed in the SDR space than the AE. AEs are a little bit more self-sufficient, whereas SDRs, I think, do need just a little bit more help, a little bit more of a nudge sometimes.
Yeah, I think SDRs, they haven't quite understood. One of the most, again, cheesy, but it's like one of my favorite moments of working with any SDR is that initial light bulb moment, right? Where, what I mean by that is when they start to realize that their life can significantly change with if they are able to build a thriving sales career. That first commission check where they're like, oh, if I just do this again,
Yeah.
and then I repeat that 24 times, I might get a promotion, and then I can do that, and that could get me a flat in London, which is obscenely hard. And so, sort of so on and so forth. And it was only because I experienced those things myself, I was lucky enough to, was the fact I kind of started getting, I think, bored of those personal like achievements. Like, it's just never really been me. And I always, it's so selfish as well, but selfishly, I get kicks from other people smashing it because I've maybe contributed to something in their journey that has helped them make a better decision, or not kick off at something because they lack the soft skills of dealing with the pressures of working in a fast growing startup, right? And I think there's probably also people on this call where we've sat down sometimes, and I've had to say to them, look, go away for 48 hours before you say something stupid, and have a think about what you want to do, and then come back. If you're either in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. I'll help you leave. But if you're in, we'll give you everything I can possibly give you to go and be successful. But the choice is yours. I kind of wish that I had that myself when I was being a young, arrogant, overstated salesperson that just had probably got too much luck too quickly. I would say I was in the right place at the right time. And whilst it sounds amazing to go up that fast, it's not the full story. Like, I went down just as quickly. I was at rock bottom when I got let go from Perkbox. I was in love with the company and the culture, but it was my first love in business, right? And your first love kind of hurts the most when it ends, right? So that was definitely when I was at rock bottom, for sure. So what goes up must come down. That was a key learning for me.
So you said there was that, like, upon reflection, you were able to see that, like, it wasn't all you know, you got lucky, everything. Like, of course, you played a part, but you're a part of a larger puzzle. Do you remember the moment that dawned on you? Like, you know, you're at rock bottom, you're on the way back up, you're reflecting. Was there a moment where you're like, oh, maybe it, like, all that success wasn't just me?
Well, I went through this. When I got let go, I went through this like angry phase, right, where I was like, I think a lot of people do. You go through it where you're like, oh, I've just been let go. I'm looking at this thinking, I've literally delivered multiple seven figures to this business in ARR in the space of a couple of years. Like, there just isn't, you like, why would you let me go? Like, I should be able to behave kind of how I want to behave. But that was actually just, got to that point there where that wasn't actually me as a person. All of these positive things that had continuously happened had made me gradually more and more and more arrogant over time, and more and more and more, you know, I think, well, arrogance is just the right word, actually, right? Where, like, I thought I was kind of, untouchable, and you're just not in business. You're just not, and actually just not in life. Like, I got so complacent about it, and it was the perfect and right lesson for me at the time. But when I received it, I was so angry for like 3 months. I was really, and used to struggle to let go of grudges as well. So I was like, I hate you so much.
I will make you pay. I will have revenge.
Yeah, and like, I remember then starting to apply for jobs, right? And I was like, well, my job title here is head of sales. People were like looking at my CV and be like, so you're 24 and you're head of sales? No, like, you're not gonna, like, I'm not getting past the first round. I'm not getting past anything. I'm like, oh, maybe I need to like lower my expectations here. So I spoke to a couple of, what I actually did was I got past the angry phase and I went to a reflection phase. And I called my old managers at my previous at Perkbox, and I met with them and I apologized to them face to face for how I'd actually gone, like, down that path.
Yeah.
And then I asked them for introductions, as you do as a salesperson. So I was building pipeline.
All about those referrals, yeah.
I didn't actually go with go to network, right? I went to them, they were in my network. But the point being was that I actually did ask them for referrals at the end, because I'd apologized to them and I hadn't actually asked them for anything. They then said, look, how can we help you? And I said,
nice.
Well, here's a few people that, would be like interesting in the HR tech space. And then from there, they didn't actually introduce me to Peakon, but they introduced me to a couple of other companies. And from there, I found Peakon. And the reason why I actually found Peakon was because my housemate at uni's ex-partner worked at Peakon. So I reached out to her. Again, go to network, right? That, and then from there, I got introduced to the CRO at Peakon, who originally said to me, there's no roles available, etc. And I then nurtured them over about 8 weeks to, with like positive updates of like, I can't remember what it said, so I have to dig some of them out, but whatever at the time. And then finally the role came up of SDR leader, and I decided to take that role. But yeah, it took me a while to actually curb my ego, because I was like, I'm head of sales now. I can't drop my title. And yeah, what was really interesting about that learning for me was, again, I think it's a couple of people on this call, right, is I've actually hired quite a few people who did full cycle sales in other industries who have taken an ego hit on their job title, maybe their salary, these kind of like external things, I would say, or extrinsic things, to go into the land of SDR and kind of rebuild from the start. And that's really where I was when I started that SDR piece at Peakon. Not a lot of people knew I was absolutely at rock bottom confidence wise at that point. In terms of my very short sales career, it wasn't like I had decades under my belt, but what I did know was like, okay, if I've done this kind of once, we can do it again. Hopefully I'm in the right place at the right time. And I would say that time, 90% luck, 10% judgment. Like, I judged the fact that I liked working with SDRs, so I took that role. And I liked HR tech, so I took the role. So it's slightly more judgment. At Perkbox, I was just like, cool, work in startups.com, apply, got an interview, got the job offer. Sounds great. Like, free lunches on a Friday, awesome,
Yeah.
done. And that was honestly my decision making process at the time. I didn't even know what product market fit was. I had never even heard of it before. I didn't even know how to log into the product, never mind anything else. Right? So it was slightly more like calculated, but not massively. And then you don't know really the market and how it's gonna act or behave. And Peakon then did really well, and again I was the right place, right time.
Yeah. Okay, love it. I want to change tack slightly because I want to get your thoughts. Having made that journey, having started as an SDR, where you're saying every 6 months you got to do an email blast, through to what the SDR world is today, and you're consulting with multiple companies at any time, so you're seeing it in different industries. What was the golden era of being an SDR, and what's changed since?
What was the golden era of being an SDR?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. I'd say golden era of being an SDR was start of 2016, 17, where, especially in Europe, I think it's a different question for the USA, by the way. I think it's a little bit before that in the US, slightly, not long. But the reason why is the golden era is because most companies out there that us as SDRs are prospecting into at that point, they had not fully digitalized what they were doing from a workflow tech stack perspective in all of their departments, right? Across the entire business. Most things were manual, like honestly paper process stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the point being was there was a huge amount of greenfield to go into as an SDR. You were going in and saying, hey, you're using this paper process that's taking 3 months. Click this, and jobs are good. And everyone's like, wow, that is, you're literally taking someone from the UK to the Caribbean straight away on holiday, right? And it's an easy sell. It's an easy sell there when people are doing something so manual and time consuming and all these classic things. But what then that led to was it led to this like mass land grab of all of these accounts, and therefore all of this revenue as quickly as possible. And what we saw on the back of that was hire as many SDRs and AEs, and scoop all of this up, and then buy sales-based technology to try and do it even more and at mass. And what we've then got to is, okay, we're using mass automation tools now as an example to just try and do more. But that's a behavior that actually was working in 2016, right? You could build a sequence with 4 emails in it, and if you didn't get a response, all right, like, it wasn't the end of the world, but you were getting a lot more than you are now. So like, it was a lot less effort to get a lot of a sort of richer reward. And now what you're seeing in the market is everyone's got something, right? Everyone's got SaaS in all departments of their organization. So it doesn't matter whether it's like procurement tech or whether it's cyber security tech or HR tech. It's all there. So SDRs are calling and emailing and social selling or whatever to displace what is already there. Doing something that's new that you haven't done before compared to displacing something that is already in seat for marginal gains, that's an entirely different sell. If you've got the same profile of SDR, right, where we're not training them still properly, we're not investing in them still properly, we're not onboarding, all those sort of things, then the game is fundamentally changed. If you think about it like sport, you're putting the same team out to play against a team that is absolutely ready to come and kick your ass, basically, right? And you're going to lose way more of those games. And buyers are so used to the old school tactics that I think a lot of sales teams or a lot of companies that I come across still use. But yeah, that's like the fundamental change. It's taken years for that to happen, but that's also why I'm so like, bullish about the fact that you see on social all the time things like, okay, immediately AI is going to take over by tomorrow. And actually, I think AI is a great thing. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for that to really embed. Like when I look at the past and the history is a great indicator of the future. And all of these changes that we've said historically, like automation is going to replace SDRs, demand gen is going to replace SDRs. I'm like, I'm still waiting for them to it. What history has told me is those two things is humans have abused them both. And that's meant that humans therefore still are needed in some sort of the process. So I'm kind of just waiting for humans to abuse AI in some way, because we abuse everything, fossil fuels, whatever. Like it's a classic human behavior to land grab again. At some point when the market comes up, I'm sure money will start becoming cheaper from a venture perspective, and people will start land grabbing again because we just can't help ourselves as human beings, and or founders can't help themselves. Sorry, Mac, but the point being is, like, I just think that this will be a repetitive thing. Well, that's my prediction anyway. It's just a different topic with AI, and but I do think that AI will be important, and it will help SDRs. Automation helped SDRs. Demand gen helped SDRs. I benefited from those things firsthand. It's just a fact that we cannot help ourselves.
It's you've got to say it. It's also like the service providers as well. When they sell automation and they sell kind of scalability, they often price based on that as well. So you had email solutions that were kind of charging on how many emails you would send a month. So of course they're going, you should add more people and send more emails. I remember, back in my CSM days, chatting with other CSMs, and when I was at PlanHat chatting to CS leaders, and they were like, for some reason, we now have like 5 Sales Loft accounts because the sales rep at Sales Loft told the sales leader that CS could use it as well. So don't cancel those seats, just give them to CS. And you're like, don't just like the prospect doesn't want to receive 15 emails in a blast. Your customer definitely doesn't want that. Like it was in their interest to make you use it more, which is actually not in your interest in the long run.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's I mean it's very, very interesting to think about what the future of the SDR role will hold because of this. And it's like anything though, there's such an argument about the future of the SDR role. Is like, is it dead, is it not dead? Like, I'm kind of like, well, folks, it's probably somewhere in the middle. It's evolving, but like anything, any market anywhere in the world ever, it normally goes through an S curve, right? Where like it evolves, spikes up, and then whatever has spiked or has worked really, really well, there it hits that plateau and then starts to go down, right? That is the point of what SDR is at the moment. It's at the point of disruption, and the disruption was at the bottom here, automation in 2015 or 20 whenever, and demand gen in 2003 when Facebook took over. These are the points of disruption. It was ripe. It was ready as a sales industry to be disrupted. Now it's ripe and ready again to be disrupted, right? We've got people who have abused automation. It's not working. Buyers hate it. Right? Salespeople kind of know that they don't want to do it, but they just like, oh, sod it, I'm going to do it. And it's at that point where I still think technology works best, or I've always bought into the idea technology works best when it's coupled with a human being. It's just It's just I'm not sure how we, like anyone, I think whoever has the answers, like how do we couple it? Let's be
Uh,
honest, like, there's lots of problems in sales.
I think you've nailed the thought I have, which is like in all of those periods of disruption, the key thing was the best people still acted like humans. And that sounds really obvious, but people still buy from people, no matter what the technology disruption, whether it was a phone call, back when that was all you could do, you cold call. It was the people who didn't just do the script, but on a call could still be a human that you wanted to deal with that did better. You moved to mass email, still a level of personalization, follow up that showed you were a human being was what worked. We're meant to use technology to do more of the grunt work that allows us to be more present as a human so that people get to know us. But I think you're right. Like so often, well, I've got this technology, I can do more of everything now. And we forget that we shouldn't replace ourselves in the process. We should be finding out where can we get out of the way because it's just going to do this faster. And it doesn't matter whether a human does this bit or not.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things I think, because I'm sad like this, is one of the things I think about a lot is like how do the different generations, because I have to think about this, like it's kind of like my baby, I guess, but like creating pipelines, and you're thinking about, okay, how do the different generations of people actually buy that we're targeting? And so when I'm consulting a company, one of the like key things that most companies actually miss is they don't consider who they are selling to and how that individual actually buys based on their like generational kind of like preferences. And I think what we're seeing now is there's so much chatter on social media about, buying behaviors changed. Everyone wants everything to be digital. They never want to speak to salespeople again. And what we have to kind of remember is like that buying behavior, it's not an overnight change. It's a gradual, thing that kind of spikes up. And then guess what? We're going to have a different generation. Gen Zs or Gen Z, that's my Britishism of Gen Z and not allowing myself to say Gen Z, but is sorry to my American friends on the call. But the point being is like how Gen Z's by now, that's going to then be disrupted by whatever the next generation is. Just like when I was 25 and I was like coming to my CEO with all these new ideas about how I knew millennials could buy, and my CEO would turn around to me and say, "No one that we sell to is an HR director is a millennial, mate. So shut up." And I'm not saying the same thing to people. I'm saying it a lot nicer, but I am saying that yes, over time, Gen Zs will become the primary buyers, right? But we, at B2B level, but there is a lag in B2B for Gen Zs to get there, whereas in B2C there is no lag because the Gen Zs jump onto TikTok and they can buy, some drip or whatever. Like that's the coolest word I've ever said. By the way, guys, I should never say it again. But you can buy whatever, and because they have quick access to it, and it's there in front of them. It's the same for my business model, right? Where a lot of my business model is it's a one-to-many model, which means, and I'm therefore posting on social where SDRs see that, visit my website, and hopefully buy my stuff, right? Ideally, but that's it's different in that B2B environment a little bit as well, and it's just going to take a little bit longer, I think, for that to really come through.
Do you think then, and I think the answer is going to be no, so then I'm interested to know like where it does fit, is social where SDRs need to be nowadays? Or do all SDRs need to be using social? Who should, who shouldn't?
Honestly, my take always has been, so I'm going to step back. SDRs right now who have got SDR jobs, when I look at them, each one of them is going to be better or worse from a skill set perspective at certain parts of their game. And because calling email and social all books meetings right now, my thing is to managers, I'm saying to them, go and find what is best for Christian, Chris, James, Mac, Alice, and then push them towards doing more of those based activities. Someone is better at verbally communicating, they should be speaking on the phone more or sending videos more. If someone is better at writing and copy, then they should be, engaging on social, DMing and cold emailing more. But this is where like most SDR teams have gone wrong in the last 2 years. Is they've looked at SDR, said SDR is inefficient, so therefore we need to 2x the output at an activity level. Everyone do double the amount of calls. Some of your best reps are saying, well, I've never booked a meeting via calls. I'm better on email, or the other way around. And we're not actually catering to the individual within the team. And I think that's the hardest part, is we have blanket KPIs, blanket rules, just so a dashboard looks pretty. I don't care about the dashboard of activity that much to prove that we've made some effort. I care that we're getting the result out the other end, and that result is turning into revenue for the organization, which then turns into valuation and makes everyone feel a lot better about themselves and less panicky. But that's how I think about that now. I think in the future, SDRs will start to become hired more, and the job description will change to SDRs who have experience of leveraging AI-based tools, to have experience of being able to write copy. You're already seeing examples of people who have invested in their personal brands getting offered jobs that they probably aren't that qualified to do, right? And then they get them and everyone's like, oh, they're actually just really good at writing LinkedIn posts and not good at selling. So, there's pitfalls that I think we're learning with this, but like copy and engage, but not just copywriting, but engaging online with prospects, I think is going to be a skill that people need to develop. But when people say to me, okay, does everyone need to be able to build a personal brand? Absolutely not. That's not everyone's game, right? I've got a friend, James, right? He hates the idea of building a personal brand on LinkedIn, but he loves building a personal brand, with his friends on Instagram, right? We see him all over the world all the time. So he's not shy, but he just doesn't want to do the personal branding from a professional capacity perspective. And I just don't see that necessarily being what you need immediately. But I do see SDRs who are able to do that and they can write really well being preferred as people that are, within businesses. I think what businesses are realizing with the job description more and more is SDRs are not here to just pump out an activity dashboard. They're here to actually be able to, and I think go to network and everything Mac talks about is spot on here, where I've been saying very similar, different words or teaching teams very similar things is SDR has historically been a short-term game, very transactional. You call and it's either a yes or a no, but we're driving that behavior as leaders as to them being a yes or a no. And then we realize that actually a lot of the convos our SDRs are having, the biggest constraint is timing. So why are our SDRs not being trained and motivated towards building longer term relationships with prospects that are good fit accounts? So historically, we're seeing like SDRs, I think, move from transactional call, email, get a yes or a no sort of behavior to, and then just start conversations to engage and maintain relationships with prospects or multiple prospects at top accounts over long periods of time. The funniest thing about all of this is when I used to teach SDRs to nurture back in the day, I still teach them now on how to nurture and just engage and maintain relationships over long periods. The interesting thing about it is that I stole it from my time as an AE, because when we used to get demos at Perkbox, a lot of people would turn around to me and say, Chris, timing's just off. But I was the only person in the team that used to book a meeting for the future with them and then give them whatever updates and nurture them and get good at the skill of nurturing over time. And what did they do? I called them now in August. They said, no, October. I'd nurtured them until October. What did they do in October? They bought from me. So I'd learned that skill. It's actually for an AE skill. AEs are great at longer term relationships with individuals, but everything in SDR world historically is geared towards this extreme transaction environment. You see it. You see managers pull people into the rooms every single day. Still now, it used to be a good thing in maybe 2017 where it's this land grab. But now it's like, how many activities have you done today? How many meetings today? How many no's you get? remember, no is the second best answer in sales. Well, I disagree. Not right now is the second best answer. As long as you can nurture them, you've got that
Yeah.
skill set to maintain the relationship. Then guess what? You've got a great meeting for September or October. And what's even better? They know you, they love you, they want to work with you because you've nurtured them properly and not just stuck them through some random automation sequence that's
Yeah.
invited them to events at an industry that's not even yours.
Yeah, in a city that they don't work in. That was my favorite. Getting invites to an event like in Manchester when I'm in London. Like, I don't think I'll pop in on Thursday. Sorry. Like, what insanity?
Yeah, and and things like, it's, I appreciate the attempt of nurture when we're saying, cool, here's a case study. But then what we're doing fundamentally when we're saying here's a case study is we're giving the person absolutely no context as to why you're giving them that value. The case study is valuable, or parts of it are valuable, but you have to give them a reminder as to why that's valuable. Give them the context why you're sending it, then send it, then remind them when you're meeting in the future. Weirdly, I actually wrote an article about this week. I literally call it the reminder sandwich, where it's just like remind them of the context, give them the value in the middle, the juicy bit, and remind them of when you're next speaking. And it ties up your first conversation with your future conversation and keeps them engaged and remembering you. Because one thing salespeople or sellers don't really know at SDR level is we're never really taught the psychology of how our prospects are behaving and thinking. Our prospects are humans; they have terrible memories, right? All the stuff that's coming into their memory right now, they're forgetting. Most of the stuff that I just said 3 minutes ago, everyone on this call, you've already forgotten it. It's come into your sensory memory. A lot of it's filtered. Anything, some stuff that's come into your short term, a lot of it's already being, decaying and going. So our job, when we've spoken to a prospect and got us into their short term memory, is to appropriately make sure that we become part of their long term memory, right? And there's two ways to do that. You either send them a load of automated emails and you're in their long-term memory, but they don't want you to be there. They want to run away from you. Or you are in their long-term memory and they like you and they view you as valuable. But they need to understand why you are valuable. Inviting them to an event in, I don't know, Cape Town when they live in Rio is not, it's not valuable.
Love that. I think this is really interesting because it completely aligns with what you're saying of, the golden era of SDR was when people were going from manual to automation. So you could phone up and you could be more transactional because you're like, I'm going to show you a completely different world. I'm going to hand you over. I'm not going to have to speak to you again because I'm not replacing something. Now, when you are selling software, you definitely get a lot more of not right now because we have a solution in place that runs until September next year. We should talk again in May. And they mean that because that's when they're going to actually start to review their current software. But as you mentioned, we measure SDRs on activities. And so what I've definitely seen in some companies as well is here's your 100 accounts for this week, go hammer them. And then you go, okay, but 30 of these were actually another SDRs 1 month ago where they did 2 sequences and 6 phone calls. And now I'm going to do the same thing. And you almost start to joke when you're receiving these of like, oh, I've got a 5th SDR now at this company. How fun. Like I wonder who I'll get the email from next month, because these companies don't get that you're meant to be building a community around your products and being actually engaged in the industry. And your SDR, NDR as Mac's calling it, and we're talking about it with that go-to-network play, the network development representative, the more they can show that, like, look, I'm here for the long term, which shows my company is here for the long term. We're not just trying to sell you some vaporware and disappear. We're actually trying to drive the industry forward. Like here's, like you said, the reminder sandwich, was it? What did you call it?
Yeah, the reminder sandwich.
Beautiful. That stuck in my short-term memory. So the labeling you got for that's perfect. But if you can show them, like, I remember why this matters to you. This also matters to me. Here you go. Like, people want to learn more about your company because you're also a good representative of the company then. They're seeing that they hire people that care about the space evolving, not just selling the software.
Yeah, I think it's fundamental to how humans build relationships. Again, going back to this psychology piece, right? And again, I was just lucky to study psychology and have a real interest in it, so I think that's always helped. But when humans, I think, from a social perspective, are building relationships with people, they're naturally very wary of new relationships. And as an SDR, back in the glory days, and still now, which things haven't quite evolved and caught up yet with the market and buying behavior. Normally the case, though, buyers are always ahead slightly of the seller, typically. Yeah. It's just, I think it's a lot more at the moment. Like, we're gonna have to do a lot of work. But it's you look at people who are from a, yes, when they're building relationships from a prospect perspective, and sellers are being motivated to ask for something from the prospect immediately, to get from prospect immediately. I know this sounds so fundamental to life, but it is, and it will never ever change at human communication and connection level, is you must give to receive, right? It's literally biblical, right? So, right, and I am not a man of God, but the point being here, folks, is there is something in that is fundamental to how we should do business on a day-to-day basis. And SDR and this thirst for more accounts, go, get the valuation. Our TAM is this huge. Yeah. We've actually got accounts on Mars now that we can sell to raise venture money. That's not this stuff that has driven all of these behaviors that has gone all the way down to SDR teams, and the SDR teams have pushed that so hard onto buyers that the buyers have essentially, coupled with the fact that buyers there's also new generation involved here as well. Like, they're pulling away from those sort of behaviors, and actually, like, you've got to give someone something often over a long period of time before they actually engage and speak to you, or never mind buy in the first place. And I think fundamentally, this is where, when everyone says, "Oh, cool, build a personal brand," well, the reality is you're going to need to do that for 3 to 6 months before you sell anything. Yeah. You're going to have to give. And then once you have sold the first thing, you need to keep giving. That's one, that is the 101 thing with LinkedIn, or posting on LinkedIn or anywhere, is it's a continuous game of giving. But it's the same for sellers and SDRs. The problem is we've never been taught how to give. So we give things like a webinar or live event in South Africa to people who aren't based in South Africa, or we give them a 40-page case study about something that's absolutely irrelevant, right? Because we've never been taught how to give. We're only being trained every day on how to get a meeting, how to get a pipeline, how to get a conversation going, how to handle an objection so you can flip them around and kind of convince them how to do something, force them into some kind of corner so they can't say no. And we just got to catch up with that whole piece of building relationships with our prospects, and therefore the wider communities and wider industry. Because then it actually, like, when I think about go to network, right, or I think about network development reps, one of the intangibles about a great network development rep, or a great SDR, whatever you want to call them right now, is actually word of mouth, right? And that is always going to be the best marketing channel that any company can ever invest actually in. But can't see that on dashboard, so it doesn't matter, right? But it really does. And that experience that buyers have with us from the get-go is always going to be paramount to how they engage. But whether or not they actually tell other people in their networks to engage, that expands everything. And it's like pushing a boulder up a hill, I think, is when you get going really hard, there's so many times you want to quit. Not that I've pushed many boulders up hills, but then when you get at the top, it goes, right? You see these things with the big personal brands online now, the Justin Welsh of this world. It's like they got struggled to 50,000 people, and now they're at like 600,000 because it's just spiraled via word of mouth. Their first digital courses that they were selling, very different B2C, but it's spiraled. Same in B2B world. Like we're still selling to humans who talk to each other.
Yeah, I love it. What, in terms of, I know you can't actively generate word of mouth, right? Obviously, it's from behaviors that make people want to talk about you and why they like you and would recommend you. But how do you, every SDR is different. How do you help them find their style that then will lead to word of mouth?
I think for current SDRs, it's about encouraging each one at an individual level to play to their strengths, and then work on their weaknesses in the training room, right? This is direct from sport, but it's so obvious, and I have no idea why sales leaders don't take it on board. Is if I have got a football team of 11 players in front of me, one of those players is left footed and they've played for the last 15 years at left back and are really good there, it's kind of silly for me to say, okay, well, you're left footed, so I'm going to play you on the right side
Yeah.
instead. Or what I want you to do is kind of do a bit of a blend of everything while we're playing the game. That we're not playing to our tactical strengths there on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, you play a football match once a week, but in SDR world, we're playing a game for 8 hours every day. It's just more intense, right? It's just more regular. So we've got to get into a rhythm of looking at each one of the people in our team and encouraging them to play to their strengths when they're playing the match. They're playing the match when they're on the phone, they're making dials, they're writing email, they're DMing people. No football manager turns up to their team and just says, "Hey, just go and kick the ball 100 times in any direction that you want today, and we'll go and review that at halftime and then at full time. See if anyone's got a goal, and we'll go around the room and say, "Do you score today? Yes, no. Score today? Yes, no." That is not how they operate,
Yeah.
right? So if you the way I think about it is like sales and sales development should be, well, it is a profession, but it should be considered as if you want to be high performance within that profession, then you need to take each game a little bit more seriously. And seriously isn't just turning up and putting in random effort, kicking the ball in every kind of direction and then running after it like a 5-year-old would. It's about thinking about, okay, how can each player on my team, the resources I have to play with this game today, Monday or Thursday, this 1st of August, how can I get the best result from this game I'm playing today? And then tomorrow we come in, how can I get the best result from that game? And that's directing people to play in the right positions as much as possible. And then when they're not playing the game, they're in the training room, you're training them on their weaknesses, or you're gearing them up to maximize their strengths even more, whatever that is, right? But that's like, it's just fundamentally thinking about your team or your department as an opportunity to build something that's high performance. Performance being kind of, for me, like distinguished by everyone in the team is able to reach their optimal potential. And that's going to be different from different people. But if you give them blanket rules like 100 dials a day, you're never going to get optimal performance from everyone in that team. It's just not going to happen.
This sounds almost like, it sounds so right, but almost like annoyingly simple. Do you know what I mean? Where you're like, it makes so much sense. You're like, wait, why have we complicated this? I often feel it's maybe targets get raised, results start to wobble, and then there's panic from the leader, and they go, okay, the way I can guarantee this right now, we know that 1,000 phone calls gets us 10 meetings, which gets us the deals. So I just need to make sure we do 4,000 phone calls, and we're going to get 40 meetings. And so it starts to wobble, and then they accelerate into the wrong direction.
But what everyone has to realize is just my view is that the reason why SDR teams struggle to scale so much is because you're fundamentally, just like an AE team, you're hiring everyone at different skill levels, right? Not everyone is the exact same person. As much as we would want, everyone always says, "Oh, cool, hire." Testing, we had this guy called Ben Freeman, who was just this machine, and was like, hire another Ben Freeman, and then hire 10 more Ben Freemans. It's like, well, there are no more Ben Freemans. It's just like he's weirdly an anomaly, right? You can't rehire him, but everyone comes in at these different skill levels, but also to make it more complicated across different skills. You've got someone coming in who's good on the phone, verbal communicator, someone who's not, but good at copy. someone who's good at social and engaging, but not good on the phone. And they're all over the place as SDRs. So unless you are specifically hiring to gear towards hard skills, which by the way, the internet tells you at SDR level, never hire on hard skills, only hire on behaviors, right? Then you're never going to be able to create a scalable team that goes off the predictable revenue model of, 1,000 calls equals 10 meetings. Because then you take that rule, you hire 2 people who are really good at email, tell them to stick them on the phone, and then they don't hit number, and you wonder why your hiring's gone to pot. It hasn't. You're just asking them to do the wrong things. You're asking players on your team, your football team, to play rugby when they are playing football or they're good at football, and it just doesn't quite work. So whilst it might sound like unscalable to not do it in that way, well, like, fundamentally, like, are we trying to scale the operation all the time from an activity perspective, right? Just so we can prove a spreadsheet is incorrect or correct, or are we trying to actually scale revenue here? And to do that and scale revenue, but to scale revenue without spending as much money. And that was always the thing that I used to think about, was as an SDR department, you're running a P&L. So profit and loss, for everyone doesn't know that, but you're running a P&L. How much money is being pumped out of the end of this machine? How much money am I pumping in? No SDR leaders are thinking about it as a P&L. No. It's like a completely new concept for them whenever I introduce it to them. But the problem is, top of the business are thinking about your department as a P&L. And top of the business are thinking about each one of those people in your team as a P&L, because the spreadsheet tells them to, right? Because the spreadsheet is what they've shared with investors, etc. So P&L is really the way to think about whether your team and also the individuals in your team are you essentially valuable in the eyes of the business or not valuable in the eyes of the business. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. The game is then is like, how can I make each individual profitable in the eyes of the business? And the best way to do that is to play to their strengths, not give them a cool, you've never cold called before, but just switch everything you're doing that's hitting target with email to calling, because we need to prove an activity dashboard.
Love it. I mean, that's almost the perfect thing to end on. If people want to learn more about you, get more of your stuff, where can they find more?
Start with LinkedIn. That's where I put content out there every day. Start there. You can get to know me there. If you want to as well, then I write a pretty personalized newsletter. It's around 10,000 people each week. So I've got people, anything from SDRs to sales leaders there, and the content slightly changes depending on what job title you tell me that you are, because I don't want to spam you all with the same stuff. So I do mix it up. But there would be the 2 places to kind of get to know me and get to know like what I think or how I think and what I care about.
Love it. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with you twice. Big fan of what you do and how you go about doing it as well. I think it's been interesting to learn about your experience kind of early in your career, because I think that has not just changed your approach, but how you bring everyone with you on that approach. Not just the people you manage, but everyone comes on the journey.
Yeah, my first ever manager is like, he used to essentially emotionally whip me to do 200 calls a day. And kind of like, I remember on my first day, he said, Chris, the most calls anyone ever done in their first day is 327. So I did 329 and then left the building. I was so tired. I asked him the next day, I was like, why'd you make me do that? He was like, Chris, you're like anyone who's new in sales is kind of like a Mustang in the States. You need to be broken in. And I was like, this is the weirdest. Why have I taken this job?
So that's bad advice. You shouldn't just immediately break in a sports car.
18 months later, I kind of realized how not to manage people. It was kind of a collection of very similar conversations to that. And I was like, okay. So honestly, I think a lot of life is just about learning how not to do something and failing. And I kind of have this saying where it's just like, when you fail, you learn, but when you learn, you win. So learn to fail and you will learn to win, basically, because you just narrow down like the options over a long period of time. Some people get lucky like me and it just happens quite quickly and then they fail because they get really arrogant. Some people it takes, you know, a long time to find B2B tech sales, and you've got SDRs out there, right? Like 40s, 50s who are just
Yeah.
trying this for the first time and feel kind of honored to be in the role. And they're the sort of, you know, stories that I love as well. But yeah, I don't think SDR is going anywhere, or NDR is going anywhere. Actually, if it's going somewhere, I think it's going to go up in terms of its stature in the business and its value. Once we have learned how to actually sell to people in an environment that involves Gen Zs, millennials making decisions, plus, you know, the fact that people want to buy online, not speak to salespeople quite as much. And yeah, I think that's, you know, we're behind at the moment as sellers. We're kind of, you know, we're at half time here, sort of 4-0 down at half time. But one of the greatest games ever is when Newcastle came back against Arsenal. It was 4-4 by full time. So I'm a Newcastle fan. Watch those highlights on YouTube is the key call to action from this, folks.
Love it. I mean, that's the perfect place to end it. Chris, thanks so much for joining. Everyone who's watched, we talked a lot about go-to-network and network development representative. If you want to find out more about that, you can check out comsaw.com. That's comsaw with 2 M's, or feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn. Chris, once again,